Welcome back to another episode of Business Journey Unlocked. I'm joined today by AB Jabban, founder of Construction Management. With over 16 years of experience in the hospitality construction world, AB brings a unique combination of construction management, pre-construction planning, and design, build, delivery. What really sets Sky Construction Management apart is their ability to translate visionary concepts into functional, high-end bespoke spaces. AB, it's great to have you here. I know you explain yourself far better than I ever could, so I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you for having me on your show. So we specialize in a unique niche, which is the hospitality construction. When I say hospitality construction, it comes to restaurants, nightclubs, private membership clubs, hotels. We do retail work, and sometimes we'll do offices. So that is the hospitality niche. And when it comes into that space, I always tell people, besides going to space and building hospitals, restaurants is the next most complicated thing. And it's not complicated away, but it's a lot of managing of different trades and different people. So you have the architect. Sometimes you have the architect and you have the engineer. Then you have the MEP engineer. Then you might have a kitchen consultant. Then you have the kitchen vendor. Then you have all your MEP trades. So your plumber, your HVAC, your mechanical guy, then your electrician, then you have a low voltage guy, plus the carpenters, plus all the finished trades. So it's just a handful of people that you're trying to managing to complete this beautiful space. And at the end, I tell my wife sometimes when we go to a place or a restaurant, she looks at the bar, she's like, that's such a nice bar. And she's just looking at the beautiful finish. And in my head, she has no idea of all the people that were involved in just building that one bar, from framing it out to putting the running the electric, running the plumbing, running the wiring for the low voltage for the POS station so that they can pull out their tickets when they have orders. Then on top of that, whether it's stone or tile or a wood or zinc or some kind of beautiful architectural metal that goes on top of the bar. Sometimes the bar is lit with LED lights. So all this coordination that, at the end looks great, but it's amazing that all the work that goes into it, and that's just one little aspect of a restaurant. Now blow that up to the whole aspect of it, where it's the dining, the kitchen, the the private dining room, the main dining room, the back of house where customers don't see. And then sometimes you have clients who are, they come from hands-on experience of them being chefs. So for them, the back of house is very important. And, they like to spend money on the back of house and operations because for them, the operations is become more efficient. So it helps them on the back end on that. Or you have some clients who are like, I want to spend the money where the client actually feels and touches and experiences the actual dining experience. So they want to throw the money there. So it's very funny how it all works out at the end. But if I could say anything, it's just being open, being transparent, being communicative. I'm a believer if for whatever reason there's a delay in the project, you got to let the client know there's a delay. And sometimes it's the unforeseen delay, when we opened up the wall, there was piping or roughing that we didn't foresee. And now we have to reroute our plumbing. So, it's not because we want to add more time and cost of the project. Sometimes it just happens because there's unforeseens. But, as long as I believe if you're transparent, communicative, and you work at it as a team, things will get done in place. But it's managing people, managing expectations, and then being honest, because you know what? No one likes construction. It's it's expensive. It takes time. It's a lot of moving parts. So we try to simplify it as best we can and try to make it as enjoyable as best we can. So, I always tell my team that, like when you first meet a client and you get drawings and, you agree on the contract, it's like the honeymoon phase. Everybody's happy. We're starting a new job. We shake hands, we move forward. Obviously there's ups and downs in the middle. And then at the end, hopefully, we go our separate ways, but on good terms. So I always tell my clients, whether it's current or potential, I care more about the relationship. I'm never going to retire off the one job. I like to build, 3, 4, 5 locations for that particular client. So I really care about the relationship moving forward. And I always try to put myself in their shoes, especially when it comes to money and budget, because, you know, sometimes you come to a client that, they want champagne, but they can afford beer,
Hmm.
and so you got to, put minimize those expectations and then just be fair. Sometimes they have to hear what they don't want to hear. But like I said, as long as it's open and it's transparent and you have a two-way communication, I've noticed in my experience, it always goes smooth. Like, I don't like to, people hire us, change orders come with the job. It's part of construction. Again, it could be unforeseen. It could be, we like to, when we price a job, and most of the time we'll come in there and I don't even have drawings. Like I literally, the client will walk the space with us. He probably didn't even lease the space yet. We walk the space. He gives us his design intent and his, well, as we walk the existing space, if I want to move the kitchen here, or I want to put the bar here, or I'm going to remove this kitchen equipment, put in new kitchen equipment. And based on that and the square footage and our experience of doing so many build outs, we literally give them a preliminary estimated budget. That's it. And most of the time that is a good value added because the client will get at least a starting point when he negotiates his lease with the landlord. My estimated budget to do this build out is going to cost X. So at least he has that as a starting point, and then
Mhm.
whether he can negotiate free rent from the landlord or tenant TI money, which is tenant improvement money, where the landlord will give the operator money to do the build out, and that's usually the starting point. Then from there, we'll go into once they release. I mean, once they sign the lease of that particular project, they'll go, do you have a designer? Do you have an architect? Sometimes they already have a designer on board. Sometimes they have an architect, not a designer. Sometimes they have both. If they don't, we give them a list of, people we worked with in the past, and we give them, we tell them this particular architect or designer we did this, and this project. They were great because of this, and this. Same with the MVP engineer. We do the same thing. And then from there, they'll hire them. We get actual drawings. And then once we get actual drawings, then we'll go out and get hard prices. Like we'll actually bid it out. We'll get like a plumbing price, a sprinkler price, HVAC price. We'll get them a kitchen equipment price, low voltage, based on how developed the drawings are. If we have finishes, okay, this tile costs this much. The stone costs this much to fabricate and install the stone on your bar tops or on a wall or in the bathroom. So we get them hard numbers. And from there, we'll compare from our preliminary. 90% of the time, our preliminary estimated budget transfers into our contract. And from there, we'll be like, you know what? If I gave you 300,000 for plumbing and plumbing came at 200,000, I'll tell the client, look, I'm going to be giving you back a change order credit of 100,000 because, our original budget, we were up higher by 100,000. Or if we tell the client, like, unless you want to take that delta of the 100,000, you want me to put it more into your finishes where like, you know what? Now put it in I want to do this architectural stone wall and like put that money towards there, or I want to put it on the bar top finishes or stuff like that. So we're very open, we're very transparent, and sometimes the client has the space already leased and has drawings, and then we price it out like any other GC. We price it out and we get hard numbers, and then we go from there. So that's usually how we get into the actual project. But again, I always say that just being open and transparent, we always have our numbers there. We show the client what our markups are on the bottom. It's not trying to hide anything. And like I said, I value the relationship. And even going forward, like not sometimes, a lot of times I give change orders with no cost. Just because like towards the end of the job when things happen or when there was like a real change order that something came up, for example, like we opened the wall, we have to, reroute the plumbing line. That's an actual number that the plumber has to do. And it was outside the scope because we didn't know what was behind the wall. So when
Mhm.
you do, no charge change orders, the clients get selective amnesia towards the end of the job that all these freebies you did, or I wanted to, reframe the wall, or I wanted to make uh, redo the floor here. And so, we rent it out and I tell them no charge. And, towards the end of the job, when, we're going through these change orders where some of them are actually valid change orders, but like, hey, listen, we didn't charge you for this, but this one, I can't, there has to be a charge here. We work with the client, at the end, I always tell my team, like at some point the client's going to, they have a budget, they have a cap of there's no money left over. So we try to honor that and try to be below that. We never want to hit that mark. And when they hire us, they hire us knowing that we've done so many and we're professionals and we know what we're talking about. So that's why even when we give them a preliminary number, it's not just fictitious numbers based on like actual pricings we've done and square footages that we have and projects that we've built. So those preliminary numbers, even though they might be preliminary based on no drawings, we try to do our best to get it, you know, pretty close ballpark. Now, obviously, if a client's going to go in high end finishes that we have no idea about, that's a different story. But at least it's a good baseline to start the job or start conversation with a particular client on a particular space.
It's good to have that framework. And honestly, I really like your approach, how you mentioned you try to be in their shoes, because people in that aspect those are the best people to work with. You care about their value. You care about this is something that you want. If it's not something you want, then you're not going to do it for them, right? What's kind of the single most critical pain point your team has been consistently eliminating in terms of like the hospitality environment with the owners in the build on process?
Well, the biggest part is at some point the free rent ends, you know. So obviously when that clock starts ticking that to get construction done, we try to go full steam ahead. Sometimes we'll go in where we'll get a demo permit slash framing permit. So that way we can at least start once demo's done, we could start framing it out until we have a full set of drawings where we can pull permits off. That way, one, to save the client time. But the biggest things is gas, at least in New York City, is Con Ed. That's out of our control. So we
Mhm.
try to do is, get the plumbing inspections done, get the gas inspections done, call to get Con Ed to come in and, inspect the gas so that we could turn the gas on. That is the biggest hurdle because, you can have a beautiful restaurant. If you don't have gas, you can't do anything. So that is our always our main focal point is to hit all the steps and all the inspections that we need to do to get them to gas authorization. So that is always one of the biggest things that we have on our list when we go through the schedule is how quickly we can, cross the T's, dot the I's to be able to get gas authorization for the client. And then another one is expectations of delivery of materials. I've been on a job where the client wanted to get stone tiles from Turkey. And we told it, they want to be open in October. I'm like, are you shipping these tiles? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, it's not going to get here in October. No, 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 no. It's going to get here in October. Come come towards, we're getting close to October and, the tiles is still not going to arrive. And, by the time the client ended up having to air freight the tiles. Now, air freighting tiles and just in general, air freighting is just very expensive and tiles, it goes on weight. So in that particular scenario, we gave up our markups. So all the fees to give back to the client for that. And it wasn't a big job, but at the end, I care about the relationship that we gave our markups back up, gave it back to the client. So that way he can use that money to air freight his tiles so that they would get here on time so we can install them so we can get their opening date. Sometimes people forget like no good deed goes unpunished. But at the end, even though our clients are in the service business, it's in the hospitality business, I still tell our team we're still in the service business because we have to service our clients and we have to do our best to treat them the best we can as if they were like a dining customer at a restaurant. So, with follow up, being transparent, uh, getting things signed off, whether it's a change order, try to get it out in front of them as quickly as possible. One, so they can make an educated decision. So if, well, how much is this going to cost me? How much more time is this going to take? And do we really need to do this? Because sometimes it could just be a design feature the designer wants. Like, oh, I want to make this room smaller because I have custom banquettes and I want to make the room symmetrical. If the price is okay and the lead time is not going to affect the lead time and it's the client is on board with the designer's vision, then we go from there. But like as long as you get those three things in front of the client, so they have the best information in front of them to make a decision, and we go from there.
I really do like that approach with the customer from Turkey. Even though it costs more and it kind of slowed down the process, you still gave him, the markup back. And there's not a lot of people, especially in the construction business, that would be like that, be as transparent. From my perspective, it looks like you try to treat people like family.
Yeah,
And going into that aspect, that's an amazing approach to have. I used to work in construction, uh, probably about 6 years ago. I was in it for about 2 years. My dad actually is an electrician by trade. So I do see your point, and there's so much moving pieces. And if one thing fails, it's a monopoly effect. It just topples everything over.
and also sometimes it's like you said, it's like a monopoly effect. Sometimes the client will just, ch- in his mind, he's just changing one thing. He's like, wanna I want to move
Mhm.
this finished piece on this wall here to the left. But there's a domino effect of what entails. So, okay, there might be power involved besides
Mhm.
just moving the framing and the studs. If the wall's already done, got to remove the wall and redo it. And is there plumbing behind that wall? So there might be so many you know domino effects. If that's just that one thing in his mind, he thinks it's just a simple fix that he's not aware of. So as long as you lay it out and put the cost associated with that so they have a, like informative decision. I don't know everything. I try to surround myself with people who know more than me. One, because I can grow, and one, that we can better ourselves. And when I don't know something in just general life, I ask around. I'll ask people who might know a particular, in that way, I'll try to gather as much information as I can before I make that particular decision on that particular topic. But that's how I am. So I would put myself in when you're dealing with numbers and construction and, sometimes big numbers, I would like to give as much information to the client so they can make an educated professional decision on their space. Sometimes you have clients who just be like, no, they have their budget and they don't want to shift left or right from that budget. So they'll just be like, no, I'll accept it the way it is. I'm not paying a dollar more. So they got to respect that.
Right. Yeah. So let's take a step back for a moment. When you first started the business, what would you say would have been the earlier constraints, the toughest parts, and kind of giving the momentum into expanding your business? Was it in terms of like getting permits, managing the long lead items, like you mentioned with the gentleman that tried to get tile from Turkey, or
No,
maybe it's just, or maybe it's
honestly,
just,
because this was my first business, so it
Mhm.
was the construction aspect wasn't hard because I was an assistant project manager and then was a project manager, and before I started my own company, I was running between at the peak around 8 to 9 projects at a time. So that aspect I wasn't worried about. It was more growing pains of like hiring staff, and it's kind of, you're going to hire someone, they might be great at their job, maybe. And, someone gave me good advice once saying that, not just because the person is not good at that particular task that you hired them for, doesn't mean that they can't grow and flourish in another within your company, but somewhere else. So
Mhm.
and that I took that to heart, saying, because no one's perfect. Some people are stronger at some aspects, some people are weaker at some aspects. There's people see things differently. Some people could be more visual. Some people are more like you can just give them directions that they can go. When I was an employee, the way I looked at it is like if the owner of the company is running multiple jobs and he has to make a decision just looking at real quick information. One is how would he want to see that? So I would try to simplify it. I always go back to, especially in construction, keep it simple, stupid, but like give him as much information, him or her, as much information as possible, and keep it simple and short, where that they can make a, a value decision or whatever decision they have to make at that particular moment. But that's how, and no matter what system we use, if it's garbage in, it's garbage out. So I'm very proactive of telling our team that, one, besides paying a lot of money for, we use Procore, which is a construction software. We're spending so much money on this particular software. If you're not going to give me the data entry on that, if you're putting garbage in and like I can't rely on that information, that doesn't really help me. So it's one of my pet peeves that when things are not entered right, it bothers me a lot. So I always
Mhm.
try to think of it as if even when I was an employee, how can I make my boss or the owner of the company's life easier? And knowing that even as simple entering an invoice for, let's say, a plumber, as long as that invoice is entered correctly and how they would see it. And that way he could say, okay, well, what was the original contract amount? Okay, this is what the contract amount is. How much has he been paid to date? Okay, he's been paid 20%. He has remaining balance of this. Has there been any change orders for this particular contract with the plumber? So all these little things, might be, simple for someone to look at, but you'd be surprised that, sometimes I don't know. I find like it's very hard to find the couple of individuals who care about, what what they do. You'll find people who are just, 9 to 5 clock in, and that's fine. But to find that 10% of people who go the extra effort to who care about the stuff they're doing and care about the company as a whole to better everybody around them. And so I would say, going back to your first question, is finding the proper team. We've
Mhm.
experienced going up and down of, don't fault anybody, is just, it's just growing a company and, bringing people on board. Were they a good fit for the company overall? Were they a good fit for that particular position? So it was growing pains of, going through that. The biggest thing for me, this might sound silly, but it's honesty and hard work. Everything else you could teach someone. But those two, if you don't have that hard work ethic and you're not honest, I mean, that's stuff that you're given to you and up from your upbringing, from your parents. At
Mhm.
least that's what I think. Everything else you could be taught. I'm a believer is there's no stupid question. And some of my team, they ask me stuff 5, 7, 10 times. I don't mind. as long as it's part of the process. Every industry has their own language, whether you're in finance or construction, that no one's going to get it off the bat. So I expect a learning curve, but as long as you're asking questions, learning, growing, for me, that's how you grow. That's how you better someone. Like if I can pass knowledge on to someone else, and if one of my employees becomes a business owner one day, I'm gonna be proud of that. I'll be very happy for them. Like, I was part of that journey for them, and I was able to teach them something. Then they took something from me and maybe made it better. So that's life. It's I feel like that's how you grow as a human. That's how you have people around you grow. And I'm all about openness, transparentness, and teaching. I didn't know anything. People taught me stuff, and I'm grateful for what they taught me.
You'll make mistakes on the way, but that's how you learn the most.
Yeah, and I tell them now, I'm like the best part is making you can make mistakes, and it's not on your dollar. You're learning off someone else's dime. So this is the perfect time for you as a person or individual who's learning. It's the birth,
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, going back on the work ethic, I mean, there's looking at my generation, the work ethic isn't how it was for your generation, right? And it's just you won't like you said, you'll find if you find that 10%, that's all that matters. The 90%, who cares about them? Forget about them. They're a lost cause. But actually having people that want to learn, that have that drive, and just keep asking questions after question, that's how you know I want this person on my team. I want this person to go up in my company and hopefully, as you mentioned, become a business owner. And if something like that happens, then I'd be thrilled. I'd be ecstatic. But it's just again, it's all about the upbringing. It's about how people just have their mindsets in life. Not a lot of people in my generation want to work. I have friends who haven't had jobs in a long time, and I personally myself, I've tried to help them get a job, but they just didn't want a job. They just want to be at home where they're comfortable with mommy and daddy and just be under their roof. But mommy and daddy ain't gonna be here for all eternity. That's just life. And when people are just
Sure.
stuck in that comfort zone, they're not progressing in life. Then they get depressed, then they just keep on it's all constant effect. It just keeps on rolling over. So,
I mean, like my wife always tells me, for someone to grow, she's like, for you to grow, you have to make the uncomfortable comfortable. That's the only
mhm,
way you grow and move forward. If you
exactly.
know, like starting this company, was it scary? Yeah. Did I know what's going to happen? No. Was I petrified? Yeah. But what was the worst that's going to happen? Okay, we start the company. If it didn't work out, it didn't work out. I learned something from this whole experience. I learned about
Exactly.
how to hire people. I learned how
Mhm,
to manage teams. Like a list of skills that I never experienced before. How to sell. Like I was never a salesman. Like to go out, how to network with people. All
mhm,
these things that I never experienced. So in my head, like no matter what happens, it would be a plus in my life. And if it works, great. And that's how I have to look at it. So to make that, like my wife said, to make the uncomfortable comfortable, that's how you live and you grow. And I mean, I was working overseas and I moved back here in 2017. And when I moved back, I moved, like you said, like one, it was very hard getting a job. I could have tell you I probably applied to over 1,200 jobs. And I realized all these Indeed and all these platforms, it's an algorithm. If your CV doesn't match with any of one of these algorithms, no HR person is going to read your CV. And that's when I realized my wife's friend came to visit. He was in town. He's like, "Oh, I know someone I used to work for. His family had construction. He got me an interview in so literally in 6 minutes, something I couldn't even get an interview in like a year. This person got me. And that's when I realized it's all about your connections. It's all about the relationships. It's all about who you know. And that's why the biggest learning curve for me was when I came back and looking for work, the people I thought who was going to help me were the ones who didn't help me. And the
mhm.
people who I never in my wildest dreams thought would help me ended up helping me. So I remember I bumped into someone at Best Buy. I had to go buy HDMI cable. And he was a class ahead of me in college. I ran into him at Best Buy. Hey, how you doing? I gave him my card. I told him I'm just moved back looking for work. By the time I walked from Best Buy to my apartment, he had literally sent out 3 to 5 emails introducing me to potential peoples for interviews. Like a guy that who was a class ahead of me, we were acquaintances, but he wasn't my best friend. We didn't, for him to do that was, unbelievable. Anytime I cross anybody who's looking for work or needs work, I do my best to help them put them in the right direction because I feel like, the universe corrects itself. So, you got to pay it forward. So I'm a big believer of, if, in that essence, if people are looking for work, my only question is like, are you a hard worker? I'm happy to help you any way you want. So, because I do realize that when you do refer someone, you know, your, your referral means something. So you don't want to be that guy who's just throwing referrals out there and that person doesn't, but, as long as that you have a good conversation with a particular individual, I feel like, the universe always brings it back tenfold. So there's no harm in helping people, especially if they're hungry to move on to the next chapter of their life.
Exactly. I'm a big firm believer that everything happens for a reason,
Yeah.
right? So it's all about who you know, not what you know, right?
Also, I would say a good support team, whether it's your family, your wife, your girlfriend at the time, because, there'll be times I didn't even believe in myself and I didn't think I would be capable of doing certain things. And, my wife telling me, you got this, or, I believe in you. Like, have people to believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself. That goes to another level, and it's important when you have that that circle of what's the word I'm looking for? What are they? Encouragement. That's what my wife would say.
She's encouraging you right now, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. That's awesome. So going back to the construction aspect, as experience-driven places become more complex, especially in New York City, what specific designs or technology trends are you personally seeing that requires more so of like a fundamental approach and just rethinking your approach in terms of like maybe the management process, skill sets, and on-site teams?
You know what? I always say it's funny because like other industries, technology is moving quickly. Construction, I would say just now, or I would say, when I say now, I probably say in the past 10 years, it's like the technology is moving in that way. And when I say that, like you take example, like a software like Procore, before we were doing like change orders on an Excel sheet, or you're doing invoices on an Excel sheet and converting it into a PDF, uh, or you're writing up RFIs on a notepad. And, now technology has everything in one area where you're printing out the drawings on a plotter and actually taking the site. And we still do that now, but like now everything is on an iPad, it's cloud based, job photos. There's a software we use called Open Space where we literally have one of our team members put a 3D camera on their head, on their hard hat, and they walk the job and it takes a 3D capture of the whole job. And we do that once a week. And that helps in a multiple of ways. One, if you have a designer or a client that's out of state or overseas, so they could see the progress of the site on a weekly basis. And you literally click the mouse and you can walk the job site through this software. It gives multiple advantages to both clients and contractors as a team as a whole, so that they have that kind of capability. Or they don't, and especially helped during COVID, where people weren't able to go to the job sites. Uh, Other aspects now I'm noticing is I'm seeing more of, I haven't really experienced it, but AI when it comes to the takeoffs of the drawings. Till today, probably the least enjoyable thing about our job is to sit there and do takeoffs of the drawings. When you find a good estimator, they're unique people because you need someone who's very diligent and patience, because sit there doing wall takeoffs and tile takeoffs and how many plumbing fixtures. And when you have a big job, it's just tedious. And if you have a job with a lot of finishes, it's just a lot of work, And then on top of doing the quantitative takeoff, then putting in a price to get your proposal. So that in itself, now I'm seeing a little bit more and more of AI coming into that world. Other technology aspects, I mean, more, I would say, how can I say, like robotic? I wouldn't say robots in general, but like, for example, like I've seen machines where you can put on a wall and it'll go up and down and paint the whole wall for you, So more things like that where it's not as labor intensive as before, but I think we're still far away from that. And again, that robot can do an amazing job on a flat wall, but when you have bolted arches and you have high ceilings, and at some point you still need manpower to get this stuff done. So I mean, we're going in the right direction, but it's still, I think we still have a long way to go for it to be all automated. But mostly now is that you have all these, whether it's Builder Trend or Procore, you have a central place where people can look at drawings, submit RFIs, and when you or submit submittals, and it's a workflow. When we send out the bids to our subcontractors, we could do it through Procore, and it's a great thing because you upload the drawings, you upload specs, you can put a time for when there's going to be a walkthrough for all the trades to come and do a walkthrough, answer any questions they have. When does the bid date due? You think that's great, makes everybody's life easier, but no, we still have to send individual emails to all the subcontractors with a link of the drawings.
Going back 25 years ago, all this would have been unheard of, especially with the technical aspects, especially with AI. It only helps. It's not going to hurt. And obviously, in your world, in the trade world, AI robots, they can't replace it all. Sure, as you mentioned, it'll help to a certain degree, but it won't be to the point where it'll be completely automated like certain jobs. I mean, people are fearful of AI replacing their jobs. It's just going to happen. You know, if you
Yeah,
look at the last century, there's so many jobs in the beginning of that century that were gone in maybe the 1920s. Right? That's just the way the world works. It evolves, right? It evolves into something better, something more mainstream and more efficient. But as I mentioned, it only helps. It won't entirely replace everything.
I agree. I like you said, it might take away certain jobs at that present moment, but it's going to add tenfolds of new jobs in the future that need people to know how to use AI. So, you know,
Precisely.
transition is tough. We're going to be in a world one day where we're not going to have drivers driving cars. It's going to be all automated, so, and uh, we've seen this in our lifetime now where they have the driverless Ubers like in California.
Hmm.
So we're going down that road, so you have to look at it as a glass half full rather than a glass half empty. Yes. Are people going to get affected? Yeah, people are going to get affected, but I mean, it can go down the list to every industry. I mean, now with like ChatGPT, I mean, people might not need accountants. You can just put in all your information on ChatGPT. That's it. I'm like, good to go. Please, automate. Give me my tax returns for the year, and that's it.
When it comes to tracking the project profitability, are there specific systems or data points that are crucial for you to monitor?
I mean, it's all about and that's one of the other hard things to track. Like to track every penny to detail. It's
Hmm.
so tough.
Hmm.
We try to track all our direct costs. So one aspect of it is like, okay, I have the trades that I bought out. If you're buying out the electrical scope, if it's at or below your budget, then you're okay. You just got to make sure though, if any changes come up, that obviously have to be shared with the client. And also sometimes one of your subs might give you a change, or you'd be like, no, I'm not even going to present this to the client because it's just not valid. And so that's the easy way to track that. The hard part is, at least for us, and I mean, if you have a big team with a huge back office and you have one person who's in charge of every little detail, you might be able to achieve that. Say an average construction job on an average space could go between 6 to 9 months. Now you got to make sure you're tracking that at such a detailed. It's very hard to do unless you have, like I said, uh, a huge back office where you assign all these people to track this. And like, the big companies like the ACOMs, they might have that capability. They might have their own in-house software where they're able to track that. But for us, we're still like a boutique firm where we're not at that point where we're gonna, so we do our best to track it, and we go from there. So, but that's one of the challenges we have faced. My goal for Sky Construction is to be like the Turner Construction of hospitality. I mean, I know that might sound silly, but my goal is to hit that benchmark as a hospitality construction, that niche market is to hit that level, because there are very few companies where you have the companies who are going to do the base building, and they're going to build the GC is going to build the whole build out inside and out. So when you have those where it's a big development, that GC was going to build out the actual restaurant or the F&B, the food and beverage space within that actual space. But to have a company that just specializes in, like, either a mom and pop restaurant or just a retail store or a standalone restaurant, there's not very many of those companies. Every GC could say I could build a restaurant. Yeah. But there's, like I said in the beginning, there's so many aspects and components of building a restaurant that, not every GC who does residential will be able to do a restaurant. I'm not saying they can't, but there is a learning curve to that, and that you have to learn and go through. Now, can we build a white box retail store? Yeah, it's easy. Can I do an apartment? Yeah, compared to coordinating build out of restaurant. I think it's pretty safe to say we could do that. And again, it's all about the relationships. Repeat clients, meeting new clients, and getting our name out there. And the biggest thing for us to achieve that is having the right team in place. I can't do it all by myself. I have to rely on the people around me and believe and trust in them and give them the tools to do their best. And that's how we can grow overall. We're going to have road bumps in the way, of course. But I think as we move forward from baby steps and learn from our mistakes, what we did good, what we did bad, compare ourselves from the project we just finished now with the project we're doing currently. Also, there's moving parts, different clients are different,
Hmm.
you have very proactive clients who are very hands-on. Sometimes you might have a job where the client hires an owner's rep and there's a barrier between you and the client where you're dealing with the owner's rep, which sometimes it's a good thing to have that. And sometimes I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, but it's like when you have an owner's rep, especially someone who's very knowledgeable of the industry, you have to be on point with them because, which, and again, they're representing the client. So I understand that. So I've noticed like a small space. Oh, it's an easy build out. Usually the small spaces are the hardest ones because it could be an old building or because of trying to, fit so much electrical and plumbing roughing through in a confined space. It's more challenging. One restaurant above you could be residential, and then they're complaining about noise. Again, so many different factors that can help one job and affect another. But again, it's about the team, communication, and being open and honest. Sometimes again, even if we make a mistake, if I make a mistake, I man up right away. We messed up. I apologize. This is how we can make it right, and let's go from there. I expect that from my team, and I expect that from the our subs. And we're only as good as our subcontractors. So I always try to be fair. If I treat my subs bad, they're not going to want to come and work for me or perform for me. So like I'm always good as my subs, and I consider my subs my subcontractors my family, and I got to protect them like they protect me, and that's how we get the job done. And listen, a sub can come like, hey, I forgot this. Can you help me out here? And vice versa. We could have done something wrong, but I have to go to the sub, and he's going to help us out. So it's a give and take. I tell my team, you can't always just yell and be disrespectful. In construction, I've never found that. I think the old school way was people come on the job site, just start yelling and screaming, and it's like a military, it just trickles down. That works sometimes. But I've noticed, at least in my experience, that yelling doesn't only takes you so far. But if you sit down, you talk, whether there's a mistake, whether there's a problem, we put it on the table, we work together as a team, we move forward. It's all about communication, being fair to people, treating people with respect, and that's how you get the job done. Because no one can get anything done on their own. So we're all human. We all make mistakes, and just own up to it when we do make a mistake and move forward. I know that the clients appreciate that more and respect that more. So it's part of life. If someone's
Exactly.
going to tell me I've never made a mistake or I'm 100% perfect, that I've never experienced anybody or any company be perfect. So everything with a grain of salt, and I'm only as good as the people I have around me. So I take, and I would never let any of my staff do something I wouldn't do. I've been on job sites, sweeping the floor, right there with the laborers, cleaning, taking out the trash. If we have a deadline, I'm there on a Saturday, Sunday, getting it done. So I would never expect anybody to do something I wouldn't do. And I've been there and I've done that. I've been in scenarios where I was promised to get paid working overtime, and I never ended up getting paid, but I showed up anyway, just because it was better for the project, for the company at the time, and for my boss. So I was a team player, always have been, and I'm a big believer in that. So I feel like for people to grow, now as a business owner, I feel like if someone can take something off my table or I don't have to worry about it and they get it done, for me, that's how they're helping me and elevating themselves. if I even have to ask about it, like, oh, you know what? I noticed this. I took care of this. This is going to be delivered on this date. The plumber is scheduled tomorrow. The electrician's coming after that. We're going to finish on that date. If I know that they've handled it and they're taking care of it without even me asking, for me, that's the best way. Is if you're taking something off my plate and getting it done professionally, that's the best way someone can grow. And I've experienced it myself. So
You mentioned a lot of different beliefs, and honestly, just hearing all this, it resonates. You got to think about how they would feel going into this environment, right? There's so much moving pieces in play. There's so much that needs to be done. A lot of stuff that could have been done, but would have been the best approach, maybe not, right? So it's just all the beliefs that you have, both in the business sense and your personal sense as well, will go tenfolds in everything you revolve around like in life. And if you can have that same concept, and as you mentioned, trickle down, if you can trickle that down, that belief, that mindsets into your your workers as well, people under your company, and even the subcontractors that you deal with on a daily basis. Just if you can just change one person, then it just keeps going from there. Because that one person would change other people, and it just trickle down like a monopoly effect. So before we wrap up here, I just have one question. As I mentioned, we touched on the beliefs, right? So, for you personally, what's one habit that constantly helps you deliver spaces guests would remember and be applaud that okay, I worked with AB. AB is my man. I'm gonna refer AB to everybody I could. What's one habit that really kind of nails it in?
I would say, and I don't know, it might sound silly, but in construction, it's surprisingly, pick up the phone. I'm available no matter what. My dad told me, my dad's in construction. He told me no matter what, he's like, you always pick up the phone for your clients. You always pick up the phone for your subcontractors. Even if you owe money, you put the tail between your legs, you man up, and because once you ghost them, if you don't stop answering the phone, they're gonna get scared. But as long as you're open and transparent, which I am, if I owe sub money, I'm like, listen, I put in the invoice. I followed up last week. They promised me next week. Whatever the client relates to me, I relay to the sub, and you keep that relationship open, things always will work out. But once you stop picking up the phone calls because your mind plays tricks. Okay, what's going on now? Is he not going to pay me? Do I have to leave the job? Why is he avoiding me? And that's a bad scenario for everybody. So I feel like always pick up the phone, always be available to help, and I think and transparency. Just be transparent. Even if something happened at a particular scenario, if I don't even know the answer at that given moment, I'll tell them, listen, this I don't know. I can't give you a straight answer. Let me go back, do some homework, and get back to you.
Mhm.
I'd rather do that than pretend like I know something and give them a wrong answer. I'm like, just, let me go back, let me do some investigation and come back. But at least for me, I feel like I was honest, transparent, and always picked up the phone. I think that's important. And it's even with the team. So like I said, you answer the phone for your subs, always for your clients, and even for your teammates. The door is always open, whether it's a project manager, a site super, or the labor. To me, they're all the same. They all have equal rights. And you have to hear them out. And like I said, the Sky Construction is just a name on a board. Without the people behind me, it's like, without the O line, the quarterback is nothing. So you have to, if they're the rowers of the ship, we're nothing without them. So I'm a believer in the people around me and getting the actual work done. That's what separates, I feel like, good companies from other companies. Be there if there's a problem, and then honestly transparent. Nothing goes wrong with that. I find that sometimes, like, we'll get a price for, let's say we get a plumbing price, and we don't we don't fluff the number. So let's say it's 100,000, and you know what? I'm going to fluff it up to 150. I never do that. The way I see it is, if I got three prices, obviously we value all the three prices, the estimates we got from the three different plumbers. We go with that particular number, and that's my plumbing price. I'm not going to fluff it up more on top. And I do this because I've learned from experience that, not me particular, but other companies I work for, where sometimes the clients will like, could I see your quote from your plumber? So what are you going to do when you're going to provide your quote, knowing that the actual quote is lower than what you provided to the client?
Mhm.
My proposals, my markups are always there at the bottom. Whatever you see is there. That's where I make my money. I'm very open and transparent about that. And I've been in situations where either the owner's rep or the clients ask me, well, can you please share with me the quotes that you got for your electrician or your plumber, or whether it was the lift that you got for the particular restaurant. So, I'm very, and I'm strict with my team about that. Be like, they sometimes say, well, the client will never know. I'm like, there's always a scenario where and now where things are more open and more transparent as we go on. People are more knowledgeable about construction. They'll ask, and when that moment happens, I never have to be worried because I know the way we are. This is it. This is my quote. This is my line item for that particular thing. Look, you can see it's the same, and then we go from there. And even when it comes to change orders, like, this is our change orders. This is the scope of work that the plumber gave me. That's an additional cost. This is our markups on the bottom. This is his quote attached to that. This is the drawings. The supporting documents were from the original drawings that we bid on was this. We highlight what changed. These are the drawings. This is all your information. Numbers and facts don't lie. And you just be open and transparent. I feel one makes your life easier. And I suck at lying. You could tell in my face when people look at me. So I just keep it simple and stupid. Tell the truth. Be honest. There's already enough headaches you have to deal with in construction. I don't have to worry about all this other stuff. So I just feel like if you're just honest, transparent, and just relate to the person, it's like I said, it's all about the relationships.
Hmm.
For the individual building the restaurant, or they're building a home, there's a financial impact to them. I mean, think about when you go buy a car. It's like, buying a home, buying a car, they say is the two biggest purchases a person makes in their life. And how much homework you do to study before you make that particular decision. You're going to crack all the numbers. You're going to find how many options. I mean, my wife makes fun of me because I carry a backpack wherever I go. When one backpack breaks and I have to go buy a new backpack, I will literally spend like 3 weeks investigating all different types of backpacks. It has to be waterproof. It has to have a water bottle holder. It has to have a quick, easy access pocket. I need a laptop, iPad, like all the things and this is just a backpack. So imagine if when people are building a restaurant, all the costs they have to, and there's stuff you don't even know about. Okay, their training costs. They have to buy the plates and their silverware for the restaurant. They're gonna have to, they're gonna have to start paying the electric bill. They have to put that money aside. They're gonna have to, usually for us, the FF&E, which is the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, is never a part of our scope. I'm not responsible for buying furniture. That's the owners. So there's that whole aspect of it that they have to worry about. For them, it's very stressful. Like I said before, rent will start kicking in. Are they going to be open in time before the rent kicks in? Are they going to be successful? The construction goes smoothly? Were they under budget? You trying to put yourself in their shoes and trying to just bring it down to human level, because that's at the end of the day, it's a big moment in their life. Whether they're a hospitality company and have built 30, 40 restaurants, or this is to be their first one, it's always nerve wracking, and you just try to simplify it, streamline it, and get everybody on the same page and keep expectations in check. I think that's another aspect of, don't say you can get it done when you can't really get it done that timeline, even if they don't want to hear it. So just, I think, yeah, that's, put yourself in their shoes. And if you were in their shoes, what would you want to hear? What would you want to see, so you can better gauge where you're going with this particular project, you as an individual. So I always try to put myself in their shoes. And sometimes people don't see that. Like, the tree, the money, there's no money tree, where you can hit them up with so many different change orders that at some point, well, where's the money going to come from? There's a cap. So you have to respect that, honor that, and be mindful of that when it comes to those situations. I've been in situations with the clients, like I have no money, but they really like, they would have put mirrors on the soffit to as a design piece. I literally bartered with the mirror and the client. I'm like, he can't afford to pay you, but would you be willing to, he'll give you food credit for his restaurant for a certain dollar amount. And the mirror glass vendor was like, yeah, you know what? I'll throw my company holiday party there. Sometimes you got to think out of the box,
Hmm.
and that works too, So it's just, being open, and doing your best to get it done, to get it done right, hopefully under budget and hopefully on time. Obviously, there's so many moving factors, but you try to hit those targets. And like I said, again, I care more about the relationship than I do about one individual job. I'm not going to retire off that one job. So it really means a lot to me for if we do well on a job, because I do value that. It's not just a build out; it's a relationship, and I would love to maintain that relationship with the clients. So that's very important to me. Because at the end, at least in construction, because I used to work in finance before, and and when I was working in finance, I I worked at a fund of fund, which the company used to, was like a mutual fund of hedge fund managers. And I'd go in these meetings and you have these hedge fund managers from Harvard and Yale and just uber smart guys. And, they had the risk analysis and it was just like, most of the time, I didn't understand what they were saying. That's how complex it was. But you're like, oh, these guys are so smart. But you come find out in 2008 we had the financial crisis. They're all playing the same sandbox. Where were all your risk analysis and risk measures then? You closed your funds. You wouldn't let clients take the money out, and you were no better than anybody else. So then that's when I pivoted and I'm like, you know what, this is not for me. And sometimes it's good. That's life. Like you try something, you realize this is not what you want to do, and you move on from that. You learn from there's always a learning experience from that particular job or industry that you take with you, whether it's a job or in a relationship. It goes both ways. And that's why when I went to construction, at least it's a tangible thing, like 5, 10 years from now, I can, because it's one thing to build offices. Not that many people can go to an office and see like, oh, I built that. Like you have to be invited as a client to go see this particular office that you built as a contractor. But at least with the restaurants, you can walk in, sit down and admire the space you built. And for me, that's one of the biggest joys is that when we're done with a restaurant, I'd like to take my team there and let them sit down and just take it all in, because you forget like, the headache and the trouble and the stress that you get, that when it's all said and done, you sit down, you look at this beautiful space where it come from the beautiful design, from the architect and the designer, from the MEP engineer to coordinate all the drawings, from all the trades that are there, to sit back and just appreciate what you've done. It goes a long way. And then 5 years from now, you can be walking with your wife or your parents or your kid, be like, you know what, I was part of that. That means something. So that's the best part I like about our job, is that when it's done, when the lights are on and the space is busy, people forget about all the other stuff that happened to get to that point. I mean, you try to minimize that as best you can, but that's the best part. So, and for me, you know, word of mouth is still the best marketing tool. Is that when one restaurateur, you know, calls another one, it's like, oh, I'm looking to build a new place. Do you have any good builders you've worked with in the past? And if Sky is part of that or AB is part of that list, for me, that means I did something right and I did a good job, because word of mouth is the best way to go. So
Mhm. Yeah, and once once people see the final outcome, then it's just gonna motivate them to go on to the next project, right? Because they see what the end result is. They see the magnificent project they built that customers and clients would love years ahead. I really do applaud your approach and just everything, all the angles you do with actually trying to work with the customer. Most companies, what do they care about? They just care about dollar signs. They don't take into consideration all the different fundamentals, all of the different aspects. It's like chess, right? They just think about just A to B, but they don't think about the journey between A to B. But with you, for example, you think about every minute detail. And having somebody who would want to be a potential client for you. Honestly, if I know anybody, I'm hearing you right now, and I'm like, if I had something, I would like this is a sales call right now for you. But I really do appreciate you taking your time to share not only your journey, but also the work that you do at Sky Construction Management. For anyone who's watching or listening to this, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
we have our uh, we have our company email, which is info@skyconstructionmanagement.com. You have my email, which is ab@skyconstructionmanagement.com. And then you have my phone number, 917-334-5541. And I always pick up the phone. If I don't pick up, if you leave a voicemail, I call back. And if you send a text, I will call back as well. Yeah. And we have LinkedIn. My wife is doing a great job in our LinkedIn account. So another learning of now in a day with Instagram and LinkedIn and I mean, we're not on TikTok, but we're on Instagram and LinkedIn, and that's a whole nother ball game. And again, I can't do everything myself. I can't be the one, and I think it's important for people to realize that as an individual. But like, I can't go get you business, be on top of the projects every day, check on the cash flow, follow up on our social media, because then I would have no time. Like, the best way to do it is you delegate to people that you trust and let them go, let them grow. Yeah, is there going to be growing pains? Yeah, but my wife, she took over our LinkedIn account and she's been crushing it. And I can't do what she does. So, I have to respect that and appreciate that. And that's another factor of our business now where we have to have a social media presence so people are more visual nowadays. 5, 10 years ago, at least for construction, no one, the same goes with the chef. Back when we were kids, you never saw these celebrity chefs on TV, and now it's all over the
Mm.
place and all these cooking channels, and chefs are like superstars now. So it's amazing how industries evolve, and now social media is a big part of it.
Thank you. That's very insightful, and yeah, it just when you get that delegation out of the way, you're buying back your time to focus on more growth in your business,
Yeah.
right? Well,
I
thank
mean, yeah,
yeah,
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best.
thank you, and thank you everyone who's watching this as well. Be sure to like and follow for more future conversations with business leaders and founders like AB himself. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.